Hello everyone, welcome back to Planetarium U. I hope you're having a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. And since a lot of you may have friends and family at your homes, or you may yourselves be visiting friends and family, and you may very well find yourselves outside in the evening, I thought it might be fun to look at some of the stars and constellations that you can see from your backyards this evening. Now, I have Stellarium set up here for tonight, which for me is Saturday night, May the 25th at 10 p.m. The latitude I have it set for is about 37 degrees. So we're sort of mid-latitudes, not too far north, not too far south. Of course, your latitude is going to affect what you can see to some degree. And of course, this is for the northern hemisphere, I should say 37 degrees north. Alrighty, let's take a look toward the west. Now, when you go out near the west, you may see a bright star very near the horizon, although that will probably be lost in the ground fog and the haze, and that is Procyon, the bright star of Canis Minor. You can see it here in the middle of the screen. You may notice the two twin stars, Castor and Pollux. Here is Pollux, this is Castor. These are the heads of Gemini, the twins. You may see those as it begins to get dark. Again, by 10 o'clock, it should be good and dark. If you look high in the west, and I'm going to turn the sky up just a hair to right here, you may see this backward question mark, followed by a triangle in the sky. This is the constellation of Leo the Lion. This part is the asterism known as the Sickle, the backwards question mark. The bright star right here is representing the heart of the lion. This is called Regulus, the star Regulus right there. Regulus is regularly bright. That's a fun, silly way to kind of remember it. Remember that our asterisms, again, this is the Sickle asterism. Asterisms are unofficial pictures in the sky, and sometimes they are part of constellations, like they are here with Leo. And sometimes they are not. Sometimes they can just be another star pattern that we make up. Indeed, an asterism is any of the unofficial star pictures. Probably the most famous asterisms are the Big and Little Dipper. All right, so there's Leo the Lion. And there's some artwork that can kind of help us imagine what we are seeing up there. Let me move the pointer out of the way. There are a lot of stories that have to do with Leo the Lion. He is a very, very ancient constellation. Leo's very name means lion in Latin, and though the Romans certainly recognized this star pattern as being reminiscent of a lion, that kind of recognition goes back way farther, at least to the Mesopotamians, around 4000 BC. The Persians later called Leo Ser or Shir, depending on dialect and translation. Further east in India, he was known as Simha, which shares similarity to the Swahili word Simba, which means lion, and of course is the name shared with Disney's eponymous Lion King. Speaking of kings, the Babylonians knew the sky lion as Ur-gu-la, the great lion, which then contained the summer solstice, which of course is the time when the sun is at its maximum altitude in the sky. They also called the bright star that we call Regulus Lugal, L-U-G-A-L, which means the star that stands in the breast of the lion, the king. All right, so that's a very storied constellation that we have, and you can show that to your friends and family this very evening. From the west, let's swing around and look toward the north. All right, I've turned our lines on that can help us see a little bit better what's going on up here. Right above the northern horizon is Polaris. And Polaris is which star again? What's its other name? That's right, the North Star. The North Star is special because the Earth's North Pole points almost to that star. And that means as the Earth rotates, the stars appear to rise in the east and set in the west, but up north they appear to spin around and around Polaris. We call this region in the north the circumpolar region. Again, this is for the northern hemisphere of the Earth. If you live south of the equator, the southern part of the sky would be the circumpolar region for you. And there is, unfortunately, no bright star very close to the south celestial pole, as there is here in the north. But the Big Dipper, which we see the handle here in the bowl, is another asterism. Can you see it with the lines turned off? That's right. It's another asterism that is very famous, it along with the other dipper, which we'll see in a moment. This is the brightest and most obvious part of Ursa Minor, the little bear. Let's swing up just a little bit. We're going to have to crane our necks a little bit for this one. And if we see here how the handle of the Little Dipper curves and leads us into the bowl. Incidentally, you notice these two stars here. These are known as the guard stars. The guard stars, because they appear to guard the North Star as the sky swings about. Again, the sky is not really moving, but it's us here on the Earth. But if we notice above this dipper, and indeed if we sort of imagine it pouring out in this direction, we will find ourselves poured right into the bowl of the Big Dipper. And here's the handle. This again is another asterism, and it is the most obvious part of Ursa Major, the Big Bear. If we turn our artwork on here, you can see our little bear there. We see our big bear here. Let's move this guy just a tad so we can see his feet. Notice near the bear's feet, here, here, and here. I'll turn the artwork off again so you can look for them without the artwork. Pair of stars. This pair of stars and this pair of stars are another asterism. That's called the 3 leaps of the Gazelle. The 3 leaps of the Gazelle. You notice our bears have very long tails. And you can make up your own story about how those bears ended up with those really long tails. That might be something fun to do with your family. Again, the big bear is called Ursa Major, and the little bear is Ursa Minor. Tilt the screen down just a hair there. And this is one of the most looked at areas of the sky, at least certainly for amateurs. Ursa Major, of course, the famous home of the Big Dipper asterism. The 7 bright stars of the Big Dipper are known to Hindus as Saptarishi, the 7 sages. And that is the 3 stars here of the handle and the 4 stars of the bowl of the Big Dipper. Notice also that the star that is near the bend in the handle, there's actually 2 stars if you have very good vision there. That is Mizar and Alcor, also known as the horse and rider. That's a good test of your vision. At any rate, these 7 stars or 7 sages are the kind of things that end up in many myths, even in our modern time. The video game, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, and The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past before that, had 7 maidens or 7 sages that were tied to the lore of Hyrule, the world where the game is played. The Egyptians imagined the Big Dipper as the severed limb of Seth, which was torn from his body in a battle with Horus. In fact, resolving that optical double there of Mizar and Alcor, again right here, that was a vision test of the Roman army. The Greeks told the tale of Callisto, one of the many nymphs of Artemis, after whom Zeus lusted powerfully. Callisto would only be with Artemis, so Zeus disguised himself as such and seduced her. Born of this union was Arcturus, who was destined to become ruler of the people who would later be known as Arcadians. Hera, Zeus's wife, was furious about this, as she often was, and had a right to be, so she changed Callisto into a bear, whereupon she fled into the wilderness. Years later, Arcturus was out hunting when he encountered a bear in the woods. It turned out it was Callisto, and when she saw her son, she ran to embrace him. Arcturus, not knowing it was his mother, knocked an arrow in his bow and was about to shoot when, sablam! Zeus hurled a thunderbolt, and in a flash changed Arcturus into a bear too. He then reunited mother and son in the sky so that they could be together forever. And today, of course, we see Arcturus as our little bear, and Callisto as our big bear. Again, that's just one of many, many stories that have been handed down to us by various cultures throughout the years about the pictures in the night sky. All right, now let's kind of zoom out just a tad and look toward the northeast. It's kind of easy when we're looking at a flat screen like this to kind of get disoriented. So again, we'll throw our lines up here, and we'll throw the art up too. Again, here is Arcturus. And what was the name of that constellation again? That's right, Ursa Minor. And the asterism? That's right, the Little Dipper. And above here we have what asterism? The Big Dipper, right? And the entire constellation? That's right, Ursa Major, the Big Bear. Okay, let's turn the artwork off. Let's turn off the lines too. Okay, so here is the bowl of the Big Dipper, and here is the crooked handle. Notice the handle arcs. You want to follow the arc to Arcturus, this bright star here. Earlier in the evening, if you see this closer to the horizon, it may look like it's flickering blue and orange, maybe red. But that's just an effect of our atmosphere. Arcturus is the brightest star in this kite-shaped constellation. Boötes, the herdsman, and we see him here. Boötes is another old constellation. In fact, he's one of Ptolemy's 48 original constellations. If you watched one of my videos about the Summer Triangle, you will know about Ptolemy. But this constellation is much older than Ptolemy and his famous work, the Almagest. It appears in Babylonian cuneiform tablets as Shu-Pa. It was associated with Enlil, their chief deity, who was sacred to farmers. And it's hard to say exactly who Boötes represents in the Greek tradition. One story has him as a farmer driving oxen, plowing the northern sky with the stars of the Big Dipper. And the Big Dipper in England is known as the plow. That's another common name for that asterism. The Greeks sometimes called him Arctophylax, which means bear watcher, because he's looking at the two bears, Callisto and Arcturus, the transfigured bodies of Zeus's lover and her son. And Arcturus, again, the bright star here, remember, arc to Arcturus. Its name comes from the Greek word arctos, which literally means bear. All right, so if we can see even more stuff, though. We turn our heads around. Again, we're keeping an eye on the Big Dipper's handle here. Okay. All right. All right, so if we look even higher ahead, here is our Dipper. Here's the handle. We're going to arc to Arcturus. And then we're going to speed on to Spica. Right here, Spica. Spica is the brightest star in the constellation of Virgo, the Virgin, which is this very abstract looking pattern that kind of looks like a lady that is reclining or sitting down or laying back. In fact, this one is so difficult to envision. I usually just tell people, when you're looking at Spica, know that you're looking in the region of Virgo. If we turn on the artwork, we see her standing, and Spica actually represents an ear of wheat. The Mole Alpine, which is that Babylonian star catalog, calls this constellation Mul Ab Sin, the seed furrow. It represented Shala, who was a Sumerian goddess of grain, and her ear of barley, which we see here. Spica literally means ear of grain in Latin. That's, of course, the language of the ancient Romans. The Romans associated Virgo with Ceres, the goddess of grain, and Ceres' name is where we get the word cereal. Right? Everybody loves cereal, right? It was the grace of Ceres that allowed humans to discover spelt, so the Romans said. Also the yoking of oxen and the planting of fields. And it was through this grace that humans were able to settle down, give up a nomadic lifestyle, and establish law and order. So pretty big deal. Now, we often refer to the sky as a giant celestial clock, and Virgo is an important part of that clock. Each northern summer, she rises early in the east, right at the time for harvest of winter wheat. Remember, the way to find Virgo is to look at the Big Dipper. Again, there's the bowl. Here's the handle. Arc to Arcturus, and then speed on to Spica. Notice this is generally one continuous arc. I mean, it's not perfect, but these stars are so bright that you will notice them, even if there's a lot of light pollution. All right, so let's swing on around here. And let's talk about at least one more star pattern before we go. Notice this little fella here that kind of looks like a sail, right? So here's a mast, and here is the sail. This is Corvus, the crow. And we're imagining maybe this to be the body of the crow. This may be his beak. He's looking down. He's looking down, and this is his wing. He's in flight. The artwork here shows something very similar. Now, this is a pretty obvious constellation, even though it's not super, super bright. It's in a part of the sky where there aren't a whole lot of very bright stars, and its shape does really catch your eye. Corvus is one of the 48 constellations that Ptolemy had in the Almagest, and it is a Greek interpretation of the Babylonian raven. Okay, this is a character that shows up in Babylonian stories time and time again. And in the Babylonian cuneiform tablets, the raven is listed as Mol Uga Mushin. Now, this raven was a familiar of Adad, to whom the raven is sacred. Adad was the Babylonian god of storms and rain. In fact, we just had a tremendous storm here last night with lots of rain and thunder and lightning. We got about 2 inches of rain in a couple of hours, which is an awful lot for us here in the hills of Virginia. At any rate, this raven, sacred to Adad, god of storms and rain, and in the ancient Babylonians' time, 4000 BC or so, Corvus rose in the east just before the start of the fall rainy season. These 4 stars here, the 4 brightest stars, are part of an asterism. Remember, asterisms are unofficial pictures in the sky, called Spica's Spanker. Now, a spiker is a type of sail, and this particular one is formed by connecting these 4. And you can easily see how that looks like a sail. All right. And I usually use this star right down here as part of Spica's Spanker because that reminds me of the mast on a small sailboat. All right, so that does it for a brief look at our Memorial Day sky. There are other star patterns up there, and if something catches your eye while you're out with your friends or family this weekend, leave a comment here letting me know what you saw, and we'll talk about it together. I always enjoy hearing from you. Before you go, if you liked the video, please leave us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so Your support means everything to me, and I really appreciate your time as always. For now, I will bid you adieu wherever you are, whenever you are. And I'll see you next time, right here at Planetarium U.